Hello, Augies Worldwide. I'm Dave Kassler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another episode of Ask Dave. Today's question comes from Addy, who does not give a call sign, but I suspect he is an amateur. He says, we are doing a project which requires us to train and instruct personnel in the correct use, operation, and supervision of the Morse code system to a group of 20 people. Can you help us with training or recommend a trainer? Well, let me say this about that. There are many different ways that you can learn the code. You can learn it on your own even. You can learn it with somebody. I found that copying Morse code was far harder than sending it. And so I had a roommate who, with many misgivings, agreed to send Morse code to me, and he could send about as fast as I could copy, which was really slow. And I finally got it up to the 5 words a minute necessary to pass the novice test. It was back around 1973, 74, somewhere in there. Okay, so there are many different ways to learn the Morse code. There is no way to learn the Morse code that does not involve practice. And you learn code best by having conversations with other people using Morse code. And so you will want to generate doing that on the air as soon as possible. So that means your recipients need some sort of QRP rig or something like that. I assume they have tech licenses. If they have tech licenses, they have HFCW privileges. And there is a slow code area around 7110. Okay, excruciatingly slow code in some cases, but it works. Okay, now how do you get people to learn the code? First of all, it is best practice not to show them dots and dashes. You don't say an A is a dot followed by a dash. You do it orally. A is a da-da. Okay? And you can't learn it all at once. Some people are faster than others. And this is going to be a problem with 20 people. Now, back in the old days, in World War II, when people had to learn Morse code, yeah, you had groups of 20. They were going to go become ship's Morse operators and so on. But today that is just going to be difficult. Most code teaching is one-on-one, although I have conducted code classes in the past. Now, there are a bunch of things that you can look up on Google that are of some help. CW-ops is one to look up on Google. LCWO.net. That's LCWO.net. You can also go to cw-ops.org/CW Academy. That might be the same as the very first one I named there. And then another one that's very good is Long Island CW Club, all squashed together into one word, .org. Long Island CWClub.org. Okay, and these are existing online groups that have people there that will work one-on-one with you getting through the code. Okay, you can also look online for my favorite CW trainer, which is the G4FON, Golf 4 Foxtrot Oscar Mike. Okay, G4FON. The G4FON is a piece of CW that will teach you the code, basically 2 characters at a time. It will mix things together, and then you can check your code against what was sent, and it will take you all the way up through not only the numbers, but also the so-called prosigns, and also the weird symbols like a slash or others that you might need from time to time. Believe me, in the Morse code, there's a symbol for everything. And there are Morse codes for even for Japanese, Chinese. You can get the German umlauts in there, all kinds of things like that. We are kind of lucky in the fact that in American and of course English, that the letters, we don't use umlauts or tildes or things like that. So they are there, but we can just stick with the 26 characters. Now, let me talk a little bit about learning the code. You're going to, and I really recommend the G4FON for this. It gets you familiar with all the letters of the code. Start slow, and slow and steady wins the race here. Really fast, 3 hours a day for a week will exhaust you and you'll give up on the project. I recommend 15 minutes a day of practice every day without fail. Morning or evening, try it at different times. There is on the radio, and it's the frequencies are published in QST. The ARRL does code practice, it broadcasts code practice at speeds from 5 words per minute up to 35 words per minute. And it's just sending text out of QST. So you can, it will tell you where it is sending from, so you can go back and check and see if you were right. Now, can you learn together? Yes, you can learn the letters together. That's a good thing to do. It's important to learn to send as well as receive. Receiving is harder to learn than sending. However, I have heard a number of people on the air whose sending is abysmal. So practice sending. The dit and the da should be a factor of 3 or maybe a little bit more. My dit and da ratio is closer to 6. And I've been told many times that my code is extremely easy to copy. There is a method called Farnsworth where each letter is sent at 18 words a minute, but the spacing between the letters is at 5 words a minute. So you hear the sound, you give your brain a moment to come up with the letter, and then you write it down. I do, and now there are going to be people who disagree with me on this, but I do recommend that you write your code down. After all, that is the meaning of the word copy. It copies it from the air to the piece of paper. I also recommend you get used to copying in cursive lowercase, not uppercase. Cursive lowercase takes a lot less work to do. I realize there are some Gen Z out there who have never been taught cursive. Just print in lowercase, okay? The difference between cursive and just printing is that you don't pick up your pencil from the paper and it just flows together. But whatever works best for you. Not caps. Caps are, they take a lot longer to write. So do cursive lowercase. Listen to what's on the air and try and pick out letters. And you may be able to do that. Also, as you drive along, you see signs, and you know, if you see a Shell station, say to yourself, dit dit dit, dit 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 dit, dit da 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 da. Okay, Shell in Morse code, and let it consume you. Now, how to get your speed up and get confidence on the air is to get on the air, okay? I've already recommended around 7110 kilohertz on the 40-meter band as a place to start. I would recommend that you get people to talk to each other from your code group so that they can go home and get on the air, and Jim will get with Bob, and they live close enough together that with 40-meter QRP, they're going to hear each other really well, and that you go ahead and just talk. Another way of doing it is to have code practice on your local repeater. Repeater owners will very often allow this because everybody thinks knowing code is a good idea. So what you will do is get on the repeater and transmit your code practice lessons, and then afterward read what it was. And if you want to pair people off 2 by 2, they can get off on simplex frequencies and do that for each other if they don't have true HF QRP capability. Now, what do you use for key? I highly recommend that you start with a classic straight key. Now, this right here is an MFJ 566M. It's not very expensive. You can find more at the maker of this, cwmorse.us. Okay, and they come in all shapes and sizes. I recommend getting one with a base like this so that when you press down on it, it doesn't flip. Okay, get it like this. Put it, and I'm going to show this on the overhead here. Okay, put this down on the table. It'll be at an angle, and grab the top, put your finger on here, send your Morse code without letting go of the knob. The reason is that this way you have more control. Note there are 2 adjustments on this thing. This top adjustment, just make sure that you don't have much slop in the key. And this other adjustment is the force required. See, it pushes against that spring, and it adjusts the force required. Everybody will have a different preference. Do I recommend starting with a bug or an electronic key? No, I don't. Because why? It takes a little getting used to the electronic key. That can be a second step after you get your code speed up to 13, 14, 15 words per minute. You're going to start to want to use the keyer that's in your radio, and you'll need to get a set of paddles for that from the same source for about the same price. They're less than $50. Whereas if you buy the fancy presentation style keys today, you can pay anything you want for a Morse code key up to over $500. You do not need to do that. Those keys are not inherently any better. If you're really lucky, you will locate a J38 key from World War II. If it is complete, and there are lots of parts and pieces to it, I find those keys a joy to operate. Okay, so I hope that gives you some ideas. There's some sources. I don't know that books are going to help you much because it's an oral skill. You're rewiring the circuits from your ear to your brain to your pencil. Okay? You're going to wire new circuits. The older you are, the harder it is. Have I ever found people who couldn't learn Morse code? Yes. Yes, I did have one. He was a handicapped person stuck in a wheelchair, and I tried to teach him Morse code. I don't think he practiced very much, and so every time I went to meet him, we were starting over again, and I finally had to, with deep regret, withdraw from that exercise because it didn't work. Now, there's an awful lot of ham radio that's on CW, so if you only do voice or FT8, you're missing out on a lot of the fun stuff that's in CW. CW travels further for the same amount of power. You need less power to close a connection than you do with the voice by quite a bit. And you can find it's very interesting. Now, eventually, after you've done it for a while, you'll start hearing combinations of letters. For example, da, da, A-T. You'll hear that as at, or the, da, dit, da, dit. You will hear that as the. And, you know, when that starts to happen, you know you're doing pretty well. Some people say practice copying in your head. I respectfully disagree, that's something you can do later. Practice on a piece of paper, because what I find in my logbook here, I've got some where I've copied right into this notebook here, which is my logbook too. And then I've got the entire conversation, the other person's half of it. I don't write down what I'm sending, of course. I do that from memory. So that's a lot on CW. I think you can have a lot of fun with it. But if it gets to the point where it's a chore that keeps you up at night, makes you feel depressed and anxious, maybe CW is not for you. And it doesn't have to be. It's not a requirement anymore. You can just pick up your microphone and talk to people. And that is perfectly legitimate ham radio. Don't let anyone tell you that if you don't know CW, you're not really a ham. Tell them I sent you, okay? Tell them I said that it's okay to be a ham and just do phone. All right? So, if you would, go to dcastler.com/support and see if there's a way there that you might enjoy using to help support this channel. Please subscribe, please click like, do all of the wonderful things that makes YouTube happy. And until we next meet, 73.